week 18 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few pitchers I look to drop this week. The first guy is Richard Rodriguez of the Atlanta Braves. Last week he got traded from the Pirates to the Atlanta Braves in a deadline deal, and obviously he was the closer for the Pirates. He had good success, and he had many saves on the season. On the season for Rodriguez, 43 and 2/3, 4-2 record, 14 saves, 29 hits, 12 earned runs, 2 homers, 6 walks, 35 strikeouts, a 2.47 ERA, and an 0.80 whip in the last couple weeks since he's been a Brave. 5 1/3, 2 hits, no runs, a walk, and 2 Ks. But the only problem with him is he's pitching great baseball, no doubt about it, is Rodriguez, but he's not the closer there in Atlanta. Will Smith is the closer, obviously. And right now, he don't really hold much fantasy value, even though he's been pitching scoreless innings over the last few weeks as Rodriguez. He's not going to get save opportunities. He's only going to be a setup man in the 8th inning. So if your leagues don't have holds as a category, which I'm assuming most fantasy leagues don't, I know my leagues don't, he's not a player that I would keep on my fantasy roster right now. And somehow he's still owned in 65% of fantasy leagues is Richard Rodriguez. But if he's not going to be the closer, he's going to have no value. And I think this week he's an easy drop at the pitching position. The next pitcher is Taylor Mcgill of the New York Mets. And Mcgill, he got off to a great start the first 4 or 5 starts of his major league career with the Mets. And his ownage got up to 50% owned in fantasy leagues. But now fantasy owners over the last few weeks have dropped him in 11% of fantasy leagues. On the season for Mcgill, 45 innings, 1-2 record, 39 hits, 16 earned runs, 7 homers, 12 walks, 48 strikeouts, a 3.20 ERA, and a 1.13 whip with 2 quality starts, which are good numbers. But the last couple weeks here for Mcgill, 15 innings, 0-2 record, 16 hits, 9 earned runs, 4 homers, 2 walks, 15 strikeouts, 5.40 ERA, and a 1.20 whip with no quality starts in the time. So right here, his second time around with some of these teams, especially in the NL East, he's been pitching is Mcgill. And they're starting to hit his stuff. He's not a hardest that throws as well as Mcgill. And this Met team's free-falling as well, losing the last 9 out of 11 ball games. So right here, they're not hitting the baseball for their starters. They're not giving them run support. And right now, Mcgill's only been a 5-inning pitcher over the last few outings. And teams have been hitting them pretty good the last few outings. July 28th versus Atlanta, 5 1/3, 5 hits, 1 run, a homer, a walk, 6 Ks, a 1.69 ERA, a 1.13 whip. August 2nd in Miami, 5 innings, got the loss, 6 hits, 4 runs, a homer, 4 Ks, a 7.20 ERA, 1.20 whip. And then August 7th at the Phillies, 4 2/3, got the loss, 5 hits, 4 runs, 2 homers, a walk, 5 Ks, a 7.71 ERA, and a 1.29 whip. So right now, he's been getting hit hard. And it was a good beginner's luck for Mcgill, but now he's rounding into a form as a player who has no major league experience and a player who hasn't been a top prospect in the Met system. So right now, fantasy owners, I think it's an easy drop this week for them to get rid of Mcgill. The next pitcher is Zach Davies of the Chicago Cubs. So Zach Davies, he's been a hit-or-miss pitcher for most of the season here. 114 and 2/3, 6-9 record, 119 hits, 67 runs, 15 homers, 61 walks, 84 strikeouts, a 5.26 ERA, 1.57 whip, and 4 quality starts. In the last couple weeks, it only got worse from here, the numbers. 12 innings, 0-3 record, 20 hits, 18 earned runs, 6 homers, 7 walks, 14 Ks, a 13.50 ERA, and a 2.25 whip. So right here, Davies, he's on a Cub team that obviously had a fire sale at the trade deadline, and they gave away everybody on their roster of importance. And Davies, he's not going to get much run support, and he's not pitching the baseball great as well. In his last 3 games, he's given up 18 earned runs, so he's been hit hard, and he's a player that shouldn't be owned in fantasy leagues, and somehow he's still owned in 30% of leagues. The last few games, July 28th versus Cincinnati, 6 innings, got the loss, 7 hits, 4 runs, a homer, 4 walks, 8 Ks, a 6 ERA, and a 1.83 whip. August 3rd at the Rockies, 4 innings, got the loss, 6 hits, 7 runs, 2 homers, 2 walks, a K, 15.75 ERA, a 2 whip. And then yesterday versus the Chicago White Sox, he got lit up, 2 innings, got the loss, 7 hits, 7 runs, 3 homers, a walk, 5 Ks, a 31.5 ERA, and a 4 whip. So he hasn't had a quality start under his belt, as Davies, since July 5th. And there's no reason for him to be rostered in fantasy leagues. He's on a bad team. He's pitching poorly this season. And it's just no doubt a drop off your roster this week. The next pitch is Brad Hand of the Toronto Blue Jays. So last week, Hand was on the list, and once again, he's on it. Owners really haven't dropped him. He's still owned in 84% of fantasy leagues here, is Hand. But the problem with that, he's not the closer for this Toronto Blue Jay team, even though we know he's one of the best relievers over the last few seasons in the majors. 46 innings on the year, 5-6 record, 21 saves, 36 hits, 19 earned runs, 6 homers, 18 walks, 45 Ks, 3.72 ERA, and a 1.17 whip in the last couple weeks for Hand. 4 2/3, 0-2 record, a save, 7 hits, 5 runs, 2 homers, a walk, 5 Ks, a 9.64 ERA, 1.71 whip. So ever since he got to Toronto, we haven't seen a save from Hand, and his ERA hasn't been great as well here over the last 3 out of 4 outings. So right here, Brad Hand, he's an easy drop in my opinion. And owners, they're just hoping he becomes the closer over there in Toronto, which would be a great ideal situation. But right now, there's no way he should be owned in 84% of fantasy leagues. And if you're not getting saves and you don't have holds in your league, like I mentioned with Richard Rodriguez, there's no reason to be rostered in fantasy leagues. And the 5th and final pitcher I would look to drop this week's Heath Henry of the Cincinnati Reds. So this week, a lot of closers or former closers on this drop list here, because I see a lot of these guys, like I mentioned, still owned in a bunch of leagues. But Henry right now, he's been dropped in 10% of leagues since last week, but still owned at 26. But right now, he's been getting hit hard. And Mcgill, who they traded for towards the trade deadline in Cincinnati, has been the better reliever. And the guy's starting to get saves over there, which has been an ongoing problem all season, finding a permanent closer here for the Cincinnati Reds. So on the season for Henry, 39 1/3, 2-6 record, 8 saves, 25 hits, 23 earned runs, 10 homers, 17 walks, 64 strikeouts, a 5.26 ERA, 1.07 whip in the last couple weeks for him. 4 innings, 0-2 record, 3 hits, 6 runs, 2 homers, 5 walks, 7 Ks, a 13.5 ERA, and a 2 whips. So his numbers aren't doing anything. And he's an easy drop this week. He's not getting saves. He's been getting hit hard. And he's still owned in a decent amount of fantasy leagues where he shouldn't be, is Henry. So right now with the Reds going to Mcgill as a closer, I think Henry's an easy drop this week. And like I mentioned, he's not producing anyway on the season with a 5.26 ERA. So that's a few pitchers I look to drop off my team here in Week 18 of the fantasy baseball season.